Hello friends, welcome to the Tech Granth. Today I'm starting a new series on microservices, and this whole series will be about what is microservice, how you use it in your application, how you design your system using a microservice, or how you will break down an existing monolithic system that you have into a microservice. So let's start with the series, and let me show you what all things will be covered as part of this particular series. So first thing that will be covered is what and why of the microservice, which I will cover in this video itself. And for the subsequent topic, I will come up with the other video for each of these topics. The second topic that I will be covering is design pattern. So what all design patterns you can use to come up with a microservice. These design pattern will be including the pattern which you can use if you have to break down the existing monolithic, or if you are coming up with a greenfield application. So that also those patterns can also be applied there. So I will cover all the design pattern or most of the design pattern that are available for creating a microservice. And just a brief about the greenfield and the brownfield project. Greenfield project is a project where you start everything from scratch, build a new application, and brownfield projects are the one where you have an existing legacy system and you come up with the new system. For some time you run both the system in parallel. So there are some design pattern which you will use if you have that kind of system, or if you have to come up with a product in a brownfield project as well. So I'll be covering all those in the next video, which will be on design pattern for microservices. The design pattern video will not cover all the design pattern. There are few design pattern which are very specific technology wise, or they are like they require little more detail. So I don't want to make a very big video and cover everything as part of the single video. So some of the design pattern will be broken down into subsequent video. So there will be one video which will be there for API gateway. I'll come up with another video for rate limiter. Then there will be a video for service discovery, then for circuit breaker, and finally there will be a video where I will come up with a system design for deployment of a microservice. So what if you have to deploy a microservice into multiple nodes across multiple a cluster which is across multiple continents. So I'll come up with a system design for that as well. So this is in gist of the topic that I have in mind, covering microservice system design. Do let me know in the comment section if you want me to add any other topic, or if you want me to explain anything in detail, or whatever is there on your mind. Do put it in the comment section. So let's jump into the what and why of the microservice. So the question comes, what is a microservice? So there are so many definitions that is available, but in gist, a microservice is a way of architecting your system in which you segregate your loosely coupled components. So all the components that are loosely coupled, you segregate them and you maintain them separately. I will come up with the example of the system design that I did for the backend of Amazon. The link is there in the description. I have also added the card here on the top, and I will take the example of that and I will try to explain what if that particular application was a monolith, how that could have been architected, and what is the benefit of architecting it in a microservice way. So what are the benefits of using a microservice here? The various benefits are, the first one is of course it's loosely coupled service. So each of the service is like a application in itself, and it can be maintained separately. So each service can be deployed and maintained separately. If you have like the example of Amazon backend, if you have a user service, if you have a service for tracking your order or order service, so these two can lie as a different code base. These two can be maintained separately. These two can be deployed separately. There is no dependency between these two services or these two components, as you can see. So this is a very big benefit of using a microservice architecture. The next important benefit of using a microservice or architecting in a microservice way is that the service can be architected around a smaller business logic. So suppose if you are running a very big service, maybe it's an OLAP project where you have to do so much analytical thing, and you have multiple jobs, or those jobs can be a Spark job or any other job or any other processing logic that you have. You can build a smaller services for like an aggregation service or a grouping service or maybe another service for pivoting the table or flattening the result for reporting. So all these can be basically your business logic can be further subdivided into smaller logic, and for each of those logic you can come up with a service. So that is another benefit. And if you see again taking the example of the Amazon backend, so if you have an order service, so you can further break down that order service into smaller service like for order tracking, for order placement, that kind of thing. So that is what I mean when I say you can break down the business into smaller business logic. So these are some of the important benefits of microservice. Now, another benefit is that multiple service that you are using in the same project that can be written in different languages. So you don't need to come up with a single language project. So if you have a very large project, so multiple components of that particular project will be can be written in different languages so that they are better for that particular purpose. Like a small project, a small part of a project where you are dealing with aggregation, you can write that part in Spark, you can write that using Spark. If you have an orchestration engine, so you can, if you are building your own orchestration engine, or maybe if you are writing some connector kind of thing, so you can use Java there and you can come up with a service for that particular purpose. And you can also come up with some other APIs that can be written in Python, maybe some place where you have some requirement in your project where you are dealing with a very low level design where you have to interact with the machines and also or the file system. So you can use maybe C or at times for smaller scripting purpose you can go for again Python or shell script also. And all these can be written as part of different services, but still everything will work as part of the same project that you are working on. And also this can be divided based on the engineers that you have who are proficient in different languages, so your team can be broken down according to that as well. So that is how the microservice world becomes language agnostic, and that is also a good use case and also a good benefit when you are talking about a very big project. So these are some of the key benefits of using your microservice. Now let me take example of the backend of Amazon, the system design that I came up with for Amazon or an e-commerce backend. So if this was a monolith application, what would have happened is everything that starts from here, the user service, onboard product service, all these service would have been a part of the same project. So this would have been part of the same code base, not the project. It would have been part of same code base, and each of these service would have been a module as part of that particular code base so that they are still segregated. Now the benefit, the thing here will be that some of the classes or the some of the class that is being used in the product onboard service might be used in order tracking service also, and there would have been like a clash or an overlap of the similar kind of behavior which will run across the various modules. Now that is also a good approach in the monolithic world, but the problem comes when suppose you made a small change in user service. Now, if you have to deploy your application, you have to deploy this complete application. You cannot just deploy this user service application because this whole application is running as part of one system. And that is why when you deploy, you have to deploy this complete application again. And that means that all these services that are there, it will stop running till the deployment is in progress. So your system will go offline for a certain period of time, even if the small change is there for one of the component, which might be very irrelevant with the other component. Like user service may not be tightly coupled with an inventory service or a payment service, but still the change in user service will bring down all these payment service and inventory service as well. So that is one thing. The second point is which most of you might have faced if you are working on a project for a very long time, is that at times it happens very some of the unwanted code also slips into production. Now that is not a good case, but it happens. So someone has made a change in order tracking and they have committed and they did not roll back the change just before the production deployment because there was a urgent release for user service, and that code also got slipped into the production. So that kind of scenario can also happen. This is a very silly case, but it happens. So if you consider all these things, then your monolithic system will not behave properly, and or it will add a lot of overhead to the CI/CD pipeline or the deployment pipeline that you are working with, and it will bring down the efficiency of the whole project. Now, if you break it down into smaller service, like I have broken it down here, you have a repository or a code base for user service for order tracking. Now, if I have to do a change in user service, these services are still running. They don't have any dependency on user service initially. So if a payment is in progress, it does not matter whether the user service is up or not. The payment service is, even if the user service is down, payment service is up. So it works good for me. Now, the second important point here is that scalability. So you can scale a monolith as well. So you can horizontally scale a monolith by deploying the application into multiple server. You can come up with like 5, 6 or whatever number of server you have. You deploy your application there, put a load balancer in front of it so that the load will be balanced across each of the node. But you cannot horizontally scale the individual service of a monolith. So suppose if you want to, like you are using Flipkart or Amazon and you have a sale like Big Billion Day. So on a sale like those, you want to increase the number of instance of your payment service. You might want to increase the number of instance of your search product service, but you might not want to increase the number of instance of your user service or the inventory service. So those will still remain the same, because that time the hot block will be, or the hot service will be payment service or your search service, because there will be so many search of the product on that particular day, and a lot of people will also come and buy the product. So you don't want to scale each and every component or each and every module that is present in your application. You just want to scale some of the services that is present in the application. So that cannot be done as part of the monolith, and that is where microservice comes to rescue. So let us see what are the disadvantage of the monolith. I can summarize it, whatever I told in the previous slide. So deployment is the top-notch disadvantage. If even if you make a small change in one of the component, you have to deploy the complete application. The components are tightly coupled in monolith, so that is why even if a change happens to one system, the other system also gets affected because of that. Scalability, like I explained just now, is a drawback of monolith, not because you cannot horizontally scale, but you cannot horizontally scale individual component. And last but not the least, the multiple teams will have different programming skill. They can come together, and that is where this is more of an advantage of microservice rather than a disadvantage of a monolith. Now, what are the disadvantage of the microservices? We'll look at some of the disadvantage of the microservice also, because when we are designing a system like this, where you have so much scalability for each of the service, it will come up with some of the disadvantage, and those are: you have a complex design. As the project will grow, you will have so many service. Even in a medium sized project, you will come up with like 30 or 40 microservice as part of your project, and that way the design becomes, the overall design of your project, it becomes little complex. And if someone is new to your project, it takes some time for them to digest the complete architecture of the system. The second complexity is because of the distributed system. The system will be distributed because all the services are loosely coupled and they are segregated. And if you have a transaction which runs across multiple services, so that adds up to the complexity of the transaction, and it comes up with the all the complexity that a distributed system provides. Logging is another common problem. So if you are using a microservice architecture like this, you have to come up with a application which will provide distributed logging, so that you can have a log in a centralized place, or from one place you can check the log of the complete of all the services that are running, so that a request can be traced from end to end. So that is another complexity. I have come up with an system design of distributed logging. The link is there in the description and also there in the card on the top. So you can have a look at that. And security is also an important part. So when you work with Monolith, you will have just one place to secure your application, but in case of a microservice, there are multiple components which are running all together, so that many gets added as part of your security. So you have to secure each of the application or each of the service that is present as part of your microservice. So these are the few advantages and disadvantages of the microservice, and about what is a microservice, where you use a microservice, how you use the microservice. The next video that I will come up with will be the design pattern of the microservice. So check out that video. That is it for this particular video. Do let me know in the comment section if you want me to add any topic as part of this series. So that's it. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.